Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel again. Today I have my friend Avneet here. She's doing her last previous two co-ops at a company called Vertex. This is a great company. It's doing some great things for people in healthcare industry. And so that's why I invite my friend here to introduce her experience with us, and hopefully it can, give you insight about healthcare industry and for anyone who is interested in this career path. Okay, thanks, Avneet. Can you please introduce yourself a little bit for us, and also maybe introduce the company? Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me, Andy. So, as you mentioned, I am currently working for Vertex Pharmaceuticals at the Canadian office. I'm working as a market access intern. So, what market access is once a drug is approved by Health Canada, it's about working with different stakeholders to try to get coverage for this drug because some of the medications that Vertex manufactures are very, very expensive and they're not typically that affordable. So, we work with negotiating with private insurers and public insurers like the government of Ontario to negotiate coverage so that patients can actually access medications once they're made available in Canada. In terms of Vertex as a company, so they started off typically with cystic fibrosis. So they help, a lot of their drugs are currently focused on cystic fibrosis and helping patients with that disease. And currently they're looking to expand into different types of disease areas. So that's why I wanted to do my second co-op here, is because I wanted to explore some of the additional disease areas they were tapping into.
Got it. Got it. It's great. Looks like the company is doing a great things for human beings. Yeah. So I just wondering, so you are in MBA right now. Did you take kind of like healthcare for your bachelor degree?
Yeah, so I did neuroscience as my bachelor's. Coming into the MBA, I had a lot of science background. I had a lot of that experience already. And I also did a co-op in pharmaceutical advertising. So that's where I learned about the pharma industry in the first place. I wanted to keep the MBA mostly to learn the business side. So I'm not currently taking a lot of healthcare courses because I have that background. But I feel like you can still come into pharma without being purely scientific. There's a lot of people in the industry who came in with business backgrounds or economic backgrounds. So there's definitely a pathway in, even if you don't have a traditional science degree.
All right. Great. Cool. So can you just maybe give us more details about your day-to-day and what kind of skills probably is necessary for your role here in this great company?
Yeah, of course. I think 90% of my day-to-day job was mostly project management based. So a lot of it, as I mentioned, we talked to a lot of different stakeholders. So in my first term, I was coming in at the end of a product launch. And this time I was focusing on kind of developing the project plan for a new project launch that's going to happen a few years from now. So there's a lot of preparation that goes into it. So my day-to-day was a lot of landscape assessment, competitive analysis, stakeholder mapping, things like that. Using Excel a lot to create kind of like Gantt charts of project flow and really outlining when to engage with which stakeholder, when are these deadlines to submit to different types of stakeholders, because they also have 6 to 8 month review periods. Um, so a lot of it was kind of project planning in that sense. That's what my day to day kind of looked like.
So as you mentioned, you need to do a lot of Excels. Do you guys need a PowerPoint as well?
Yeah, a lot of PowerPoint. And mostly for that is once you've done all the planning, you need to be able to present it. And you don't really show senior management teams like Excel sheets. You just show them a nice table on
Yeah.
slideshow. So yeah, you definitely need a lot of PowerPoint skills. I would say another really important skill that's maybe not technical is you really need to be open to learning. There's like when I came into the role, I had to learn so much. Like the learning curve was very steep because there's so much I didn't know about the healthcare landscape in Canada. So you have to come in very open-minded, very curious, and just willing to learn and try on a lot of different hats because the Canadian team is small. So just being open to learning and kind of getting your dipping your toes in where you can. So I think that's an important skill to come into the role with.
Mm-hmm. And do you guys work as a team more than individual, or like more individual team work?
I would say it's very collaborative at Vertex Canada, at least. As I mentioned, I work in market access, but there's also a public affairs team, and then there's a sales and marketing team. We all kind of work together. Public affairs is responsible for government relations. So the people that we're going to be talking to are government people. So they kind of do all the preparation of the landscape so that we can go in and kind of talk to these stakeholders. And then sales and marketing is responsible for making sure that people are actually getting our drugs so that we have those numbers and we can talk to clients about them. So everyone works really, really closely together, and it's a very collaborative effort, I would say.
Got it. And who is your client?
So by clients, I mean like the stakeholders that we talk to. So like there's a lot of regulatory bodies in Canada. So it could be someone like Health Canada. It could be the PCPA. So that's the Pan Canadian Pharmaceutical Alliance. So they're the ones who have an alliance with all the provinces, and they negotiate on the price on their behalf. So we don't have to go to Ontario, Alberta, Quebec, and negotiate each price with them. They have one body that will negotiate for everyone. So different type of stakeholders like that. There's a lot of regulatory bodies that we have to go through in the government to make sure that drugs are listed in Canada.
So you mean like I can find drugs in like Shoppers Drug Mart, whose brand is like Vertex.
Yeah, so similar, but our drug is a prescription drug, so you won't find it like on the shelves. You have to be specifically prescribed for it. But it would be the same process for something like Tylenol or Advil or any over-the-counter drug. Is once the company has made something like that, it's up to market access to find a way to get it on the shelves, like you were just talking about. But it varies because the Vertex drugs are not very cheap. They're very expensive drugs because they took a lot of years of R&D, and they help cystic fibrosis patients a lot. So it's a different process, but yeah, similar to what you're saying, it's just about finding some way to get the doctor to prescribe it or to be able to make it affordable for the patient so they're not paying $500,000 or however much money it is a year.
Yeah, that's great. Some tips for people who want to, how some tips to teach people how to prepare the interview. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. So I mentioned that I started with a pharmaceutical advertising experience. I did that in my undergrad, and then I had the science background. So when it came to applying for the job, that's something that I really leveraged, was talking about my understanding of the pharmaceutical space and the little bit of experience that I did have in that area. I think more so I talked a lot more about project management because that's kind of what the job really required. So I use those keywords to really stand out in my cover letter and in my resume. When it came to the interview process, they didn't ask me anything that was super kind of out of the ordinary. It was a one-step interview process, and it was a bit of a panel interview. So I was speaking with the two market access associate directors at the time, and they both took turns asking me questions. A lot of it was behavioral. They asked me some technical questions just about collaboration. They were really, really interested in how willing I was to be cross-functional. So that's why I emphasized that point in the beginning. If you want to work for Vertex, and I'm assuming you're working for Vertex Canada, because the team is so small, they really want someone who's open to, trying different things and talking to different members of the team. So I think showing that is really important. You don't want to just show them that you're stuck in a little bubble, which is your role, and you don't want to explore anything else. So I really tried to make that clear that that's what I was willing to do. I followed up with them after the interview and thanked them. So I did all of that. And then I think another big thing is network in the pharmaceutical industry in Canada. It's a lot of it is about who you know and maintaining those networking connections. So you really, really need to make sure that whoever you're talking to, you stay connected with them. So I had spoken a lot with previous alumni who had worked in this role, and I made sure that I maintained a connection with them, because the industry in Canada is so small that you're going to run into each other no matter what happens. So I think that really played in my favor as well, because they kind of knew my name and they knew that I had reached out and really wanted to be here. So those are just some tips and tricks that I would suggest to someone who wants to get into pharmaceuticals, not just Vertex, but any pharmaceutical company, is start making those connections early, start connecting with people on LinkedIn, having those coffee chats, because everyone knows everyone in pharma. And just being very honest about wanting to learn, because this industry is so fast paced, and as you mentioned earlier with COVID, there's so much more emphasis on it now. So it's just you have to be really willing to learn and adapt quickly.
Is there anything you like that you feel is kind of, a spark during your co-op term with this company that you can share with us?
Yeah, definitely. I think my first term that I was here, I was coming in at the tail end of a launch. So what I got to see then was the drug had already kind of been approved in Canada, and seeing patients get access to something that they need to save their life, that's just, I mean, it's mind blowing. I don't know how to explain how you feel when you actually get to talk to a patient and they tell you that, they thought they were going to die by the age of 25 and they're living up to 40, 50. Like, you give someone like almost double their life back. So I think that feeling is something that you can't replace. And it was really cool to see that. And now on my second term, I was here at the beginning of a launch. So now I'm actually learning about patient struggles in a different area. And it really shows how things kind of go full circle. So I was there when, someone actually got access to the drug, and now I'm at a position where I'm actually learning about all the challenges we're going to have to overcome so that someone can have life-changing therapy. I think that kind of tugs a heartstring. So if you're really looking to get into the healthcare industry, into pharma specifically, make sure you have that like passion, and there's that kind of there's that thing there that kind of ties you to it, that emotional connection, because what you're doing is advocating for patients who are in vulnerable situations. So I think that's really important. And even if you're working in the public side, so in the hospital setting, that's you definitely need to have that there because there's so many challenges and barriers you're going to have to jump through. So just being very open-minded, and I think that was the spark, was just seeing like all the work that you're doing, even if just one patient can have a better quality of life, that's very rewarding to see.
Yeah, I like totally agree. Great. Yeah, I think that's all about. I hope to know about Vertex and your experience there, and appreciate that. So last question, I just hope to, because I said healthcare is an industry that I didn't touch before. I just wondering for anyone likes me, they want to know more about this industry. Can you just briefly introduce the healthcare as a big, the big sector and also to show people which kind of area they can focus or they can, try to get into it. How many options is available there? Yeah.
Yeah, of course. So healthcare in Canada is actually really, really big. Not as big as the US, obviously, because they're just a lot bigger in a lot of different ways. But typically in the healthcare industry, especially like within the MBA, when we look at healthcare careers, there's two different kinds. There's the public sector and then there's the private sector. So the public sector includes anything that's kind of government owned. So that would be hospitals, clinics, um, things of that sort. So that when anyone says they want to work in the public side, that's what they are referring to. The private side is more so consulting, pharmaceuticals, medical devices, medical technology, health technology. So that's kind of the big separation within the healthcare industry. So if you want to work for the private side, that's where you're getting more into like health technologies and medical devices and pharmaceutical companies. Um, in terms of how kind of you can what are the different types of roles there, there's so many different types of things that you can do. I also had an experience working with a health technology company, so I was a client services associate. So there's a lot of project management roles, there's a lot of medical roles, there's also a lot of strategy roles. So medicine is changing very quickly now. There's a lot more focus on, I want to say, like specialty pharma. So what specialty pharma means is it's not mainstream over the counter drugs. It's more drugs that are focused on a very specific kind of rare disease area. So that's kind of where the industry is shifting now. Like, we have things like Advil, we have things like Tylenol. What we need is cures for diseases that no one has solved yet, right? That's kind of
Yeah.
what we're looking for. So specialty pharma is a really big place to go to. And then there's always things like consulting. Even the big four companies, which are KPMG, Deloitte, EY, they all have digital health consulting roles now. There's smaller boutique consulting firms that also work within healthcare. So there's definitely a really, really big space for that. And I also want to talk about healthcare analytics. There is a huge, huge push for healthcare analytics. Which is kind of at the center of public and private health. So understanding patient demographics and things like that, and really like consulting with bigger companies on that and helping them kind of prepare their packages for submission or prepare them for entering this kind of marketplace. So I think there's a plethora of different jobs within the healthcare industry. It's just about finding what you really like. I personally really like the pharmaceutical industry. I find it very challenging. I like that there's always something new to do. But that being said, healthcare technology was really interesting too, because technology has its own challenges. Like, kind of like the hesitancy in people to adopt technology. So there's always something that's there, and you can kind of relate it to the healthcare industry. So it's really big. I hope I highlighted a couple of areas that you were hoping to address, but I think those are the big ones that I've encountered personally. So I think that that's kind of where the landscape is shifting now.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. For anyone who is interested in the career, and I hope this video can be helpful for you. And just make sure you leave your comments here. If you have any questions, you can feel free to ask us, me and Avneet. Yeah. So thanks again for your time, and
Thank you
wish
so
you
much.
best of luck for the new semester.
Thank you so much, Andy. I really appreciate you doing this too, and I think it's going to be really helpful. I'm really happy that you did this. Thank you.
Hey, no problem. Bye.
Bye.